Welcome to another deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
Today, we're going to tackle the mysterious death of Jeffrey Epstein. You guys gave us some really fascinating material to work with.
Yes.
We've got excerpts from John Cassidy at The New Yorker,
Okay.
some really hard-hitting questions from Business Insider,
Hmm?
and Judith Miller's perspective in City Journal, which is particularly interesting because she's a journalist who's actually done time.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So she's got a unique perspective.
definitely. What I find really captivating about this case is that Epstein's death, I mean, it wasn't just like a news event.
Right.
It really, opened this window into power,
Yeah.
justice, and whether the, truly wealthy can ever really be held accountable.
Okay, so our mission, if we choose to accept it, is to sift through all this material, figure out what really happened in that high-security prison cell, and maybe, just maybe, uncover some uncomfortable truths about the system itself.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal. We're gonna look closely at those systems that Epstein navigated so well. Imagine the potential shockwaves if he had lived to face trial.
Right off the bat, the New Yorker article makes this really intriguing comparison between Epstein and Robert Maxwell,
Yeah.
another controversial figure who died in a super suspicious way.
Yeah, it's a comparison that John Cassidy uses to frame the entire Epstein case.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly fitting when you think about it.
Yeah.
Both men were incredibly wealthy,
Mm-hmm.
wielded significant influence, and were kind of on the verge of ruin when they died.
And there's a family connection, too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Ghislaine Maxwell,
Yeah.
Robert Maxwell's daughter,
Right.
was entangled in Epstein's life. For those who need a refresher, Ghislaine was Epstein's girlfriend. And many sources claim she was also his accomplice in the alleged sex trafficking operation.
Exactly. And that shared connection, it just adds a whole other layer of intrigue
Yeah.
to the similarities between the two cases.
Yeah.
This comparison really begs the question,
Right.
who was Jeffrey Epstein?
Right.
And how did he amass such power?
Yeah. Let's rewind the tape and kind of sketch out Epstein's trajectory because his story is wild.
It is.
He came from humble beginnings and somehow climbed his way to, immense wealth. But the origins of his fortune, I mean, they've always been shrouded in mystery.
Yeah, very mysterious. He was a master networker. Epstein cultivated relationships with politicians, celebrities, business tycoons, you name it, A-list. And this web of connections, it played a huge part in both his meteoric rise and his eventual downfall.
And then, of course, there's the 2008 conviction in Florida.
Right.
He pled guilty to charges related to soliciting prostitution, including from a minor. But here's the unbelievable part. He served only 13 months in a work release program.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was a ridiculously light sentence for someone of his wealth and influence.
It really was. A lot of people saw that plea deal as a miscarriage of justice.
Yeah.
It raised serious questions about whether the legal system was treating him differently because of his wealth and connections.
Right.
And then fast forward to 2019, he's arrested again
Yeah.
on federal charges of sex trafficking minors. The stakes were considerably higher this time around.
And that's where we enter the heart of the mystery.
Yeah.
Officially, Epstein committed suicide by hanging himself in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center.
Right, MC
In Manhattan. But every single detail surrounding his death is just packed with inconsistencies.
Yeah, and that's where the Business Insider article comes in. They take us on this deep dive into those inconsistencies
Right.
and highlight 7 key discrepancies that raise serious questions about the official story. For example, we have the prison guards who failed to check on Epstein regularly, leaving him unsupervised for hours.
Hold on, I'm floored. He was supposed to be checked on every 30 minutes in a high-security facility, and they just didn't. That's unbelievable.
It's pretty shocking.
And to make matters worse, he was taken off suicide watch even after that earlier incident where he was found unconscious with marks on his neck.
Right, that incident alone should have been setting off alarm bells everywhere.
Yeah.
Judith Miller, the journalist who actually spent time in jail, really hits this point hard in her City Journal article.
Okay.
She argues that in a well-run prison, suicide should be virtually impossible.
That makes total sense. You'd think they'd be extra cautious after an incident like that.
Absolutely.
So on top of the guards not doing their job, what else doesn't add up?
Well, for starters, his cellmate was mysteriously absent,
Okay.
even though protocol dictated that he shouldn't have been alone. Then there's the missing security footage from the night of his death.
Oh my gosh.
And to top it off,
Okay.
he had access to things that, could have harmed him.
like his CPAP machine,
Exactly.
which had a cord. It's all starting to sound less like a suicide and more like something else. Didn't the Business Insider article mention a note he left behind too?
They did. A handwritten note found in his cell. He complained about being held in a locked shower, being given burnt food, and then this giant bugs crawling over my hands.
Wow.
It's a chilling document. It doesn't sound like someone who's like peacefully planning their own suicide.
Right.
It sounds like someone under immense stress. So let's unpack those guard discrepancies a little bit further.
Okay.
We know that the two guards on duty the night Epstein died, Michael Thomas and Tova Knoll, had some serious problems with their records.
Right.
They were actually indicted by the feds.
Wow.
Turns out they repeatedly logged patrol rounds that they never actually did.
Wait, so they basically lied about doing their jobs, and that left Epstein unsupervised for how long?
According to the indictment, almost 11 hours.
11 hours. That's almost half a day. This is insane.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be checked on every 30 minutes, and they just abandoned their posts.
And it actually gets worse.
Oh, no.
The indictment also revealed that they spent that time browsing the internet and even taking naps.
Wow. That's beyond negligence. It's reckless endangerment.
Yeah, it's bad.
But even if they were asleep at the wheel, so to speak, how did Epstein actually manage to kill himself in a cell designed to prevent exactly that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Let's take a closer look at the cell itself.
Okay.
It was this small L-shaped room with slotted windows and a narrow hatch for a door. Every detail was designed to minimize, the risk of self-harm.
But he had that CPAP machine, right? Couldn't he have used the cord from that?
It's possible.
Hmm.
But the Business Insider article points out something really strange.
What's that?
There were no bloodstains on the alleged noose.
Hmm.
And then there's the issue of the fractured hyoid bone in his neck.
Hold on, back up a second. What's a hyoid bone?
So it's a small bone in your neck, shaped like a horseshoe, that supports your tongue. Now, a fracture of this bone can occur in hangings. But former New York City medical examiner Michael Baden, who's no stranger to high-profile cases,
Right.
he pointed out that this type of fracture is more commonly associated with strangulation.
So are you saying someone might have strangled him? But why would they stage it to look like a suicide?
That's where we kind of wade into murky waters.
Right.
To understand why someone might want Epstein dead, we need to look at what he was facing,
Yeah.
He was staring down serious charges and the very real possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars.
Oh,
He'd lost everything. His freedom, his reputation, his powerful friends. The pressure must have been immense.
I get that. But he was fighting the charges, right? He was meeting with his lawyers all the time. And the Business Insider article even mentioned that he was still paying other inmates through the prison's commissary system.
Yeah,
It's almost like he was trying to exert control over his surroundings.
that's a great point. That detail definitely, throws a wrench into the simple suicide narrative. And that's precisely why, the conspiracy theories are so rampant.
Yeah.
Was he silenced to protect the secrets of his powerful friends? Did someone who feared his testimony decide to take matters into their own hands?
Now this is starting to feel like a spy thriller. And the missing security footage just adds fuel to the conspiracy fire.
I know, right?
What a coincidence that the cameras outside his cell malfunctioned the night he died.
Yeah, that missing footage, whether it was intentionally deleted or not, is a huge obstacle in figuring out the truth.
Yeah.
It breeds suspicion and distrust in the official narrative. Makes you wonder, what are they hiding?
And remember that mysterious young woman who visited Epstein in the days leading up to his death? Who was she? And why was she there? That's another piece of the puzzle that just got gone.
Yeah, the lack of transparency around Epstein's visitor logs is definitely suspicious. It's just another example of the secrecy surrounding this whole case.
All right, so we've got a prison system that seems shockingly inept. A bunch of powerful people who might have benefited from Epstein's silence, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. Zooming out, what does this case tell us about the justice system as a whole?
I think it raises some serious doubts about, accountability within the Bureau of Prisons. Judith Miller, in her City Journal piece, really slams the conditions at MCC and argues that Epstein's death is a symptom of a broken system.
Yeah, she has a point. Even with all his wealth and connections, Epstein was still subject to the flaws of that system.
Right.
But it also makes you think, would someone without those advantages have met the same fate?
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does wealth and privilege shield certain people from the consequences others face?
This is getting heavy, but it's crucial that we talk about this. Epstein was connected to some of the most powerful people in the world. If he had lived and gone to trial, who knows what secrets might have spilled out.
You're right. His death effectively silenced him. He couldn't name names, give further testimony, or reveal the inner workings of his alleged operation. Certain information was buried with him.
So what do we do now? How do we untangle the facts, the inconsistencies, the unanswered questions? How do we even begin to make sense of it all?
This is where, critical thinking becomes crucial.
Right.
We can't afford to jump to conclusions or buy into a single narrative, no matter how tempting it might be.
Mm-hmm.
We had to look at the evidence, consider multiple perspectives, and accept that we might never have all the answers.
It's frustrating, but you're right. We have to resist the urge to fill the gaps with speculation or conspiracy theories.
Exactly. We can acknowledge the unanswered questions, the lingering doubts, without resorting to unfounded theories. Sometimes, even in real life, the truth is too tangled to fully unravel.
I guess that's a good reminder that even in the age of information overload, there are still mysteries we may never solve.
Absolutely. And sometimes, the process of questioning and exploring is more valuable than finding a neat and tidy answer.
We've gone deep down the rabbit hole today, and I think we've just scratched the surface of this complex case.
We've barely dipped our toes in. But I think what we've uncovered so far is pretty disturbing.
Definitely. And before we wrap up, I think it's vital that we shift gears and talk about Epstein's victims.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't let the mystery of his death overshadow the very real harm he inflicted on countless individuals.
Right.
Their stories deserve to be at the center of this conversation.
You're absolutely right. We have to remember the human cost of Epstein's actions. Seeking justice for his victims should be our priority, no matter what the circumstances surrounding his death might be. Their voices need to be heard and their experiences acknowledged.
It's easy to get caught up in all the intrigue and the conspiracy theories, but we have to remember that real people were deeply hurt by Epstein's actions. Their pursuit of justice shouldn't be overshadowed by the mystery surrounding his death.
Absolutely. And their stories, they reveal a pattern of manipulation and abuse that, it spanned years. Epstein used his wealth and influence to create this network of enablers,
Yeah.
which allowed him to operate with a sense of impunity.
It's sickening. The New Yorker article, it talks about how Epstein cultivated this image of a brilliant financier.
Right.
Almost like a modern-day Gatsby.
Oh, yeah.
Surrounded by powerful friends and celebrities. But behind that facade was a dark reality.
Yeah, the article highlights how he used this persona to gain access to, vulnerable young women, often luring them with promises of modeling jobs or educational opportunities. He preyed on their dreams and aspirations.
It's classic predatory behavior.
It is.
He built this web of trust and then exploited it in the most horrific ways.
Yeah, and let's not forget about the systemic failures that allowed him to get away with it for so long.
Right.
The 2008 plea deal in Florida was a slap on the wrist.
It was.
It sent a message that wealth and influence can buy you leniency in the justice system.
It's a disturbing thought, but one we have to confront. The fact that he was able to secure such a favorable deal despite the severity of the allegations against him, it speaks volumes about the power dynamics at play.
Absolutely. It also raises serious questions about the role of, those who were aware of his activities but chose to remain silent.
Yeah.
Were they complicit? Or did they simply turn a blind eye because of his wealth and connections?
Those are the questions that would have been explored in a trial.
Right.
But his death ensured that those answers would remain hidden.
His death also, left this void in the pursuit of justice for his victims.
Right.
They were robbed of the opportunity to see him held accountable in a court of law.
The Business Insider article mentions that the prison guards who were supposed to be watching Epstein that night eventually cut a deal with federal prosecutors. They admitted to falsifying records and got off with community service.
It was a controversial decision. Many people felt that they should have faced more serious consequences for their negligence, which ultimately contributed to Epstein's death.
It feels like another example of a system that fails to hold the powerful accountable.
We're left with this, unsettling feeling that justice hasn't been served, not for Epstein's victims and not for the integrity of the system itself.
So where do we go from here? What can we learn from this deeply troubling case?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that we have to remain vigilant.
Yeah.
We can't allow wealth and influence to shield individuals from accountability. We have to demand transparency from our institutions and hold those in power to a higher standard.
We also have to listen to the voices of survivors.
Yes.
Their stories matter,
Hmm.
and we need to ensure that they have access to support and resources as they navigate the long and difficult journey of healing.
Yeah. The pursuit of justice is an ongoing process,
Hmm.
and it's up to all of us to keep pushing for a system that truly serves everyone, regardless of their wealth or status.
This deep dive has been a stark reminder of the dark side of power and the complexities of our justice system. We've explored the facts, the inconsistencies, and the unanswered questions.
And while we may never have all the answers, I think the journey itself has been valuable. It's forced us to confront uncomfortable truths and to think critically about the world around us.
Absolutely. For those of you listening, we encourage you to continue exploring this case. Read the articles we've discussed, do your own research, and most importantly, never stop asking questions.
Yeah, remember, knowledge is power. The more informed we are, the better equipped we are to demand justice and hold those in power accountable.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mysterious death of Jeffrey Epstein. Until next time, stay curious and keep seeking the truth.